It is recorded that of all the tales of the elder days, none reaches higher than that of Eärendil the mariner. His light, kindled in the ruin of a lost age, still shines from the heavens, a burning memory since the ending of the first age of the world. Yet let us begin this chronicle not in the mists of the distant past, but in the deepest dark of the third age. Here, in the foul tunnels of Eärendil, a simple hobbit utters a cry of hope, in a tongue he himself does not comprehend, calling upon a power he cannot name. To find the answer, we must turn back the leaves of the Red Book to the age of myth. We must understand the story of the Morning Star and of the great and sorrowful deeds that set him upon his eternal course. This history shall unfold in 6 parts, a journey from that desperate cry in the darkness back to its ancient and hallowed source. We shall trace the path of a single ray of hope through the long defeat of ages. First, we must comprehend the nature of this light, a power gifted to Frodo Baggins in the golden wood of Lothlorien. These were the words of the Lady Galadriel upon bestowing the phial. For that crystal held more than simple luminescence, it held the captured light of Eärendil's star, which is itself the light of a Silmaril, the last unsullied remnant of the light of the 2 trees of Valinor, which shone before the sun and moon were ever made. The ancient scrolls tell that before we can know the mariner, we must know his lineage, for he was the fruit of unions between elves and men, cosmic events upon which the very fate of the world would turn. Eärendil was the son of the second union between Tur of the House of Hador and Idril Celebrimbor, daughter to the king of Gondolin. Yet in time he would wed Elwing, the descendant of the first and most famed union, that of Beren and Luthien. Thus, in his own person and in his marriage, the 2 great threads of hope, binding the fates of elves and men, were woven into one. His childhood was defined by fire and ruin. Born in the secret splendor of Gondolin, he was but 7 years of age when the treachery of Maeglin delivered the city to its doom. He witnessed the destruction of the greatest kingdom of the Noldor, carried through frozen mountain passes as Balrogs raged behind him. Yet he also witnessed the hope of escape, fleeing with his parents and the survivors to the havens of Sirion. At the havens of Sirion, by the mouths of the great river, Eärendil grew to manhood, and the sea longing that was his father's gift and his own birthright awoke within him, a ceaseless call to the deep waters. His parents, Tur and Idril, sailed into the uttermost west, and it is sung that Tur, alone of mortal men, was granted a place among the elder kind. Eärendil remained, becoming lord of the peoples at the havens. There he wed Elwing the Fair, keeper of the Silmaril, who bore him 2 sons, Elrond and Elros. And it was there he built Vingalot, the foam flower, the most beautiful vessel of song. With his fair ship he sailed the wide seas, seeking his parents and seeking a path to the hidden shore of Valinor. He hoped to speak before the Valar themselves and plead for the dying world of Middle-earth. But the enchanted isles and the shadowy seas barred his path, for the Valar had set these guards against the return of the exiles. Time and again he was turned back. Well, Eärendil was lost upon the unquiet sea. The shadow of an ancient, accursed oath fell upon his home. The last sons of Feanor, Maedhros and Maglor, learned that the Silmaril was at the havens. Driven by their unbreakable vow, they demanded its return. Elwing and her people refused, and so came the 3rd and final kinslaying, as elf again took up arms against elf in ruinous war. The havens were destroyed, Elwing's sons were taken captive. Seeing all hope lost, she cast herself from a cliff into the raging waters, clutching the Silmaril to her breast, lest it be taken. But Ulmo, the Vala, Lord of Waters, would not let the light of the holy jewel be extinguished. He bore her up from the waves and gave her the likeness of a great white bird. With the Silmaril shining upon her breast, she flew across the sea, seeking her husband. And it is this moment, the very nadir of despair, of total ruin, that becomes the great eucatastrophe of the First Age. For it is from this uttermost defeat that miraculous grace arrives, and the straight road is at last found. When Elwing fell upon the deck of Vingalot and was returned to her own form, she told Eärendil of the ruin. With all lost behind them, and with the holy light of the Silmaril now aboard his ship, the mists of the shadowy seas parted. Vingalot passed through the enchanted isles and found the straight road to Valinor. He came not for himself, but as an emissary for the two kindreds of elves and men. He walked upon the forbidden, hallowed ground of the undying lands, knowing that the penalty for any mortal who did so was death. He had come to stand in the breach between a ruined world and the divine powers. First, before the powers of Arda assembled in the Ring of Doom, he begged pardon for the Noldor, for their rebellion, for the sin of the kinslaying at Alcalande, and for breaking the ban of the Valar. Second, he asked for pity for the Eldar of Middle-earth, who for 5 centuries had fought and bled and seen their great kingdoms fall one by one before the overwhelming shadow of Morgoth. And third, he asked for mercy for men, the younger children of Iluvatar, who had been deceived and corrupted by the great enemy, but who had also died in great number fighting in a war not of their own making. His plea was heard with sorrow by the Valar, but before an answer could be given, a judgment had to be rendered. For Eärendil and Elwing, being of both mortal and immortal blood, their final fate was undecided. Manwë, High King of Arda, decreed that the choice of their fate must be their own. Elwing chose to be counted among the Eldar, unwilling to be parted from her husband, and Eärendil, for her sake, chose the same, though the lore states his heart was drawn more to the kindred of his father and the fate of men. Their choice was irrevocable. This same choice was passed to their sons. Elros chose the gift of men and became the first king of Númenor, granted a life many times that of other mortals. Elrond chose the fate of the elves and became a great lord and loremaster in Imladris, which men call Rivendell. Their diverging paths would shape all the history of the Second and Third Ages. The plea of Eärendil was granted, and the host of Valinor would prepare for war. But he who had walked on the undying shores could never again return to the mortal lands of Middle-earth. His doom was to sail the pathless voids of the sky, an eternal sign for the people he had saved. With the Silmaril bound to the prow of Vingalot, he became the morning and the evening star. The elves named him Gil Estel, the Star of High Hope, a promise sent by the Valar that the world had not been forsaken and that a light remained that darkness could not quench. With the plea answered, and the doom of the mariner set, the host of the Valar prepared for war. The might of Aman came at last to Middle-earth, to confront Morgoth for the final time. In the cataclysmic war of wrath that followed, Beleriand itself was broken and drowned beneath the sea. When Morgoth unleashed his ultimate terror, the winged dragons, Eärendil came in Vingalot, blazing with the light of the Silmaril. With him came the great eagles, and in the skies above the battle he slew Ancalagin the Black, mightiest of the dragon host. The fall of that beast broke the very towers of Thingadrim, and Morgoth was utterly defeated, cast out from the world into the void. Herein lies the great secret of that light held in the Fial. It is a physical manifestation of divine grace, a remnant of the sacred light of the dawn of the world, born by the intercessor who saved that world from darkness. The tale of Eärendil thus embodies the deepest themes of the legendarium. He is the intercessor, pleading for those who cannot plead for themselves. His victory comes at the immense personal cost of sacrifice, exiled from his home and his children, and he becomes the very symbol of hope. Gil Estel, a light that endures precisely because it was kindled in the deepest darkness. And thus we return to the darkness of Cirith Ungol. For now we understand that when Samwise Gamgee cried out, he was not merely wishing on a star. He was invoking the memory of the greatest hero of the Elder Days, and calling upon the sacred light which that hero still bears across the heavens. Look up on a clear evening, just after the sun has set, and you will see him still sailing, a brilliant point of light, brighter than any other. That is Vingalot. That is the Silmaril. That is Eärendil, a promise that even after the longest night, the darkness will not endure forever. Aya Eärendil Elenion Alkalima. Hail Eärendil, brightest of stars.